Hi there and welcome. We're so glad that you can join us for this amazing webinar today as we review some results around a national AI survey that we recently conducted here at Exponential. I am one of your hosts, Carrie Williams. I'm the Executive Director of Exponential NEXT, and I'm thrilled that you're here. And I'll have my friend Kenny introduce himself.
Hey everybody, this year I'm serving as the Director for AI Next, where we explore everything possible for your ministry going forward with this new technological innovation front. I'm also the Editor-in-Chief over at churchtechtoday.com and facilitator of a really cool community we've developed over at AIforchurchleaders.com. And really excited to share some of the results that we've gotten from this national survey that we've done. Carrie, it's been quite insightful, right? Reviewing all the results that have come in.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say that I was pretty surprised at some of the things that we discovered along the way. This is not necessarily my world. And so probably like a lot of you who are tuning in, this might be new information for you or maybe even shocking a bit information. It was for me. And I think it's also really encouraging. And so I'm excited to dive in, Kenny.
Okay, awesome. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be giving an overview, some of the highlights of the study. And at the end, we're also going to share these results in an actual report form that's completely free for you to download. And hopefully you'll use it and to share with your teams and use it as discussion fodder so that you guys can actually start the conversations necessary to really feel out where your own ministry worldview and context actually lands regarding AI. So Exponential is making this completely available to all church leaders, and we'll give you the URL that you can download the full report. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to share some of the highlights. We're going to basically drive right through it, and then hopefully we'll get to have some questions and answers. And we've got people monitoring the chat also, and we'd love for you to participate in that way too. So the first thing I would love for you in the chat, if you're here with us live, is to just share with us, have you used AI in your ministry, in your work, in your vocation to date? Just yes or no. Let's just get a sense of where people are. And that's one of the questions we asked in the survey. And this has been a landmark survey for us this year, where we've shared the survey with thousands of people, and we got a bunch of responses that have come back. And what's been interesting is we've gone through several topics, and the full report goes through these topics where it's the current state of utilization. What are churches actually doing? What are the perceived benefits from church leaders today, which I think will be interesting to measure that same question a couple of years out after we've normalized the use of AI, the challenges and concerns, and all these other things that we probably need to start doing in our ministries in terms of things like actually creating policies that actually addressed AI in the workplace, or training, development, leadership development, all that kind of stuff. So those are the types of things that you'll find in the full report, and let's go through a couple of those things right now. So the first thing is we had an entire smattering of people in this national survey. We had hundreds of people that answered, and as you can see, the primary role for people has been across the board. As you can see, there are a lot of roles that have actually taken the survey. So if you would just share with us also in the chat, what's your role over there? That would be so helpful for us to just get a sense of who's in the room. So what role do you have at your church right now? We also had a cross-section of different generations taking this survey, and the size of the church was also quite varied. And as a mirror for everybody else, you can see here that it's skewed toward the smaller churches, the average and, quote, normal sized churches. So this isn't a survey that just surveys the mega churches with big IT and tech staff and big budgets, etc. This was a representative one. And also denominationally, you'll see that non-denom was the biggest cut of the pie, but a good representation of all of the other denominations out there. So the first question that we started to tackle was, what is the perceived value? What's your relationship with this innovation front that's coming down the pike here today in 2024. And we found that leaders saw primarily four buckets of types of ministry work that was relevant to them where AI might fit into the picture: communications, data analysis, administration, and event planning and project planning. That last one, I think, is one of the superpowers of AI, but most people that have been using AI haven't actually delved into that type of use case. And so, would you raise your hand or share in the chat if have you ever done event planning or project planning with ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or any of these tools, or have you even thought of that? Is that something of interest to you? So you'll see beyond those four, there was a wide variety of types of work that seemed relevant to church leaders. And that's because AI, in a nutshell, started with our text large language models, meaning it uses input in terms of you writing language into it, and comes out of it is language type of work product. And what jobs, what roles use communication and language as part of the work. And that's pretty much every single job function. And that's why you'll see a healthy representation of what specific areas that church leaders believe that AI can be relevant to them. So this is all perceived benefits. And if you look at the spectrum of how favorable they think AI could be relevant to their work, you'll see that the skew of the numbers goes to the somewhat valuable, very valuable, and extremely valuable responses. Now that, to me, was somewhat surprising. Although I've been deep in AI, we've been speaking about it, we've been working with thousands of church leaders. This is something that Carrie and the team and I, when we look at these numbers, we're like, wow, this is refreshing, and it's very interesting that there's such a positive, favorable stance amongst church leaders who typically are not as technology forward, right? And so this is encouraging to me as a practitioner to see that there's this posture of church leaders seeing value in AI. Now, this was another big surprise for me, in that when we asked people to respond, are you for or against AI in ministry work? Usually you see this big divide. And in 2024, 87% of respondents said some sort of degree, whether you're all for it or cautious, there's some form of degree that they're for using AI for ministry work applications. 13% clearly said, no, there's no place for AI in ministry. We don't need AI in our work. But the 87% number is actually quite surprising to me. That is a big change over the last 2-3 years in particular. In fact, last year there was another study by one of our friends at Glue, and they had a very similar question. You'll see the difference between 2023 and 2024. The shift in sentiments of the perceived value of AI has gone up in the upper end of that spectrum of very valuable and extremely valuable. From 23 to 24, we've seen a marked shift in the positive direction of adoption of AI. So, do you actually use these tools, or do you just think about it all day? And so that's the question we asked here. And you'll see that's very interesting again, is that now you're seeing that people are using it pretty much across the board, daily, weekly, occasionally. There are people that have not adopted yet, and this kind of mirrors the general population in that 25% have not even used it yet, which is the same thing. Many people in the general population haven't even used ChatGPT yet. They might have heard of it. They know friends that are using it, but they actually haven't even looked it up yet. And so this kind of mirrors the general population. But what's interesting is, again, people of significant numbers, 30% are using it weekly, 13% are using it daily, 66% are using it at least occasionally in their ministry workplace. Is that a surprise to you? Would you just say yes or no, thumbs up or thumbs down? Is that a big surprise to you? Put that in the chat just so that we can see what your sentiments are. 43% of those people are using it frequently, daily or weekly. We're going to the point of the tipping point, in my mind, that almost half of church leaders are using AI tools at least weekly. Isn't that surprising? I think that's something that accelerated in this last year. And I think we're going to continue to see that acceleration happen. Now, we talked to the respondents and asked, hey, do you actually prepare sermons? Is sermon writing part of your job, part of your vocation? And we found that over half of the leaders actually write and prepare sermons. So that's the first question. So we took that 56% of the people, and then we asked, do you use AI in that process to help you write sermons? And again, this is a little bit of a surprise to me that 43% emphatically said, yes, I use AI tools in my sermon prep process. 41% said, and not yet, but I'm open to in the future, right? I might plan to in the future. But 16% say they will never use AI for this activity. And that number, in my mind, is going to be interesting to see in terms of like longevity studies. If we ask that every year, is that number going to stay the same? And is that a plateau? Or is that number eventually going to change and go down as the use of AI gets normalized across not just church job functions, but all other marketplace functions and consumer products that we continue to see more and more of integration of AI into everyday life. So again, 43% say they already use AI to write sermons. And another 41% say, hey, I'm interested in potentially using it in the future. I think that's a very interesting insight that we found this year. And then I think the question that begs it is, how are you using it? What are the best practices? Everyone is using it differently because we're discovering for the first time. How might we at AI Next and Exponential facilitate more knowledge sharing, trading of notes, and helping each other get better to get the most out of technology so that we can do our ministry better? So beyond sermon writing, we asked, hey, what else are you using? If the majority of you are actually using or thinking of it more than rarely, then what actually are you using it for? So we asked this question, what's one specific example, one concrete thing of a tool or how you used AI in your ministry work within this last month, right? And there were a lot of things that came out. And as you can see from this list, it isn't just, hey, write me an email or write me a sermon. It isn't this top line stuff. It's starting to go into things like task automation, data analysis, visualization of stuff, translation. There's all these things that I think that we are going to see more and more of being added to this list as we go through 24 into 2025 and beyond. Now, the top 4 things that people are actually using it, they're actually using it right now in 2024, is for information and research. That's a whole other conversation, but Google is taking a hit. Search engines are taking a hit of how we look at Google versus how we're looking at Perplexity or ChatGPT or these other tools. Text and content generation, again, that's intuitive because it started with large language models where you put in text and you get out text. And we probably all know somebody, if you're not using it already, somebody that's using AI tools to create content for them. Image and graphics generation is a little bit less on the ladder of usage because they're just not as easy to use yet. But this whole process of democratization of these tools is happening so quickly. We talk about this innovation happening in dog years, in that in a single calendar year, you're witnessing now about 7 leapfrogs of innovation within a single calendar year. It's just happening so fast. We use the term velocity when we observe what's happening on the AI front. And so image and graphic generation, video generation, I am sure if we do the survey again next year, will be higher on this list. And then process automation. Again, have you thought about using AI in your process automation? Are there workflows? Are there routines in your daily, weekly, monthly work that you can offload and involve AI? That's a great question, I think, every ministry organization can ask this year and see where you find those efficiencies. And again, my worldview is if you meet me and if you come to Exponential West or Central to the workshops or the pre-cons, you'll see we'll talk about the purpose is not to replace you and your job. The first steps in my mind, my worldview of AI is, can we find ways to free you up for 1 hour a week, 2 hours a week, 3 hours a week, When I get to 3 hours a week, think about every Friday. You get to Friday, and you can clear your calendar every Friday, 9 to 12. That's 3 hours. What would you do with that gift of 3 extra hours a week? Could you meet with a leader? Could you mentor somebody? Can you disciple somebody? Can you go out and reach and make appointments with community members and other civic leaders? What could you do with 3 hours a week, every week, for 52 weeks of the year? Can we use AI in positive ways and use it for good in those manners? So all these types of things I think you're going to see increase as we go forward. So we asked, what tools are you using to do those things? And the top 5 tools are here, and the full report has a whole list that you can dive into and explore. But the first one's a no-brainer. It's ChatGPT. It's the media darling of the year. They're the ones that came out of the gate in November 2022 and started this whole generative AI craze with their chatbot called ChatGPT. The second tool, some people have been using it and weren't really thinking about using it as an AI tool, but it's Grammarly. Grammarly is a great tool that's basically a supercharged spell check and grammar checker, but it does even more. It actually will help you write better. It makes things more logical, more persuasive, more poignant, more memorable. Grammarly is a great tool that if you write on a regular basis, you should look into using that tool. The third one is Canva Magic. Canva as a tool is magical by itself, but there's a whole set of tools that they have launched called Canva Magic, which refers to their AI-based tools. They have about a dozen AI functions within Canva, and then they have all these other apps that work with it. If you don't use Canva yet, you should. Outside of this AI stuff, Canva is an amazing tool. There's a free version. If you are a 501c3, they offer a nonprofit grant, so you can use it for free also. But Canva has started to integrate a lot of tools. They just had an amazing launch event to redo all their stuff, and they've introduced so many other things. The next one is Google Gemini. Google Gemini is not the top of mind in my mind, but it's only because it's Google, right? Google is so pervasive. They launched as Bard, but they renamed it Gemini. It had this identity crisis, and now they're calling it Gemini. But that is the ChatGPT equivalent, and it does a lot of things that ChatGPT does. It also creates images. It does research. There's all these things that you can do, but that's another tool that if you haven't tried it, it's a great place to start. And the other big behemoth is Bing. Bing is back. For all the nerds out there, we thought Google was it, and Bing was like, the runt of the litter. Everyone forgot about Bing, like MySpace, but Bing is back because Bing is owned by Microsoft, and Microsoft invested in OpenAI, which is the company that created ChatGPT. So at Bing, you now can get access to ChatGPT functions, the same underlying technology engine that runs ChatGPT, can be accessed at Bing, and some of the stuff is free that you don't even need to pay for the premium stuff at ChatGPT. They're calling it Copilot. If you use Microsoft Office, there's Microsoft Copilot. There's all these AI tools that Microsoft is bringing out, but Bing.com, its Copilot is the AI equivalent that you should be looking at. So, Jason had a good question. The list. Here's some other tools that church leaders are using. Again, I want you to go to the Exponential store and download the full report. It's completely free. Share it with everyone you know. You'll have all these details in there. So let's go back to the potential of AI. Where do church leaders see AI being used in the future or in other places beyond just creating emails for newsletters or blogs and stuff like that? And so here's a good question that I think is very insightful. And if you haven't even thought about using AI at all in your ministry, I think this is one of those things that might be a wake-up call and get you from intimidation to inspiration. And that is, do you believe AI tools can be used for discipleship? Now, in Exponential this year, we've been focused on the return back to discipleship. And this is an encouraging response for me. Do you see that over 50% of the respondents said that they see AI's relevance to discipleship-related activities to be either highly beneficial or moderately beneficial, right? There is this skewing of the numbers toward the higher end of the spectrum. There's some they're encouraged by what they see in AI and the application potential of it in discipleship activities. Now, there's all these other things, again, because it starts with the language model. You will typically see this in many different ways, that AI can be used in so many different places within all the departments that you have under the church umbrella. So the question was, what's the areas that are the low-hanging fruits? Where do you see the least resistance, where ethics is not an issue and there's no complications of getting things approved to use AI for? And so you'll see creative content production, administrative tasks, church communication, data analysis, church growth strategies, right? These are the things that are low-hanging fruit. And we're going to continue to support and investigate and share best practices at AI Next. You can go to the AI Next Hub at the Exponential site. We've got a podcast and video series, and we got tons of stuff in store for you. But these are the types of things that hopefully you'll start to say, hey, how might we use AI in these areas? So how do you get over that hump of intimidation to inspiration? And so we asked one question, is like, what's the factor that would most encourage you to adopt AI in your church, right? Thinking in your own head right now, what would be the trigger point to say, hey, we should actually seriously think about this? How do we investigate this? Who do I tap in on our team to actually start to experiment with this stuff, or do some things and come back and do a show and tell or a lunch and learn? And so the number one thing that everyone is looking for is availability of training and education and ministry contact. This is why our whole next initiative here at Exponential is prioritizing AI as one of the verticals, one of the focus areas this year, is to help you get free training, free education, free exposure to all this content that is going to help you get up to speed with AI. And then you'll see other things here, seeing other churches use it and use case examples. And so this is one of the things I will do a call to action here. If you are using AI in your own ministry, would you email me? Would you reach out to me? Because I would love to interview you. I would love to have you share what you're doing so that we can actually share it with other church leaders. Maybe get you on a panel or a webinar, or figure out how to share the investment that you've made in your own ministry, in your own context, and actually help benefit hundreds, if not thousands, of other church leaders out there in this day and age right now. So would you just take that seriously if you're interested to reach out to me personally, because I would love to meet you and hear what you're doing. Maybe I can offer some encouragement or connect the dots with some tools or other leaders that are using AI. So anyway, this is interesting to me that church leaders, and it's not just the senior pastor, right? All the job functions, if there was availability of training and education in their own ministry context, that would encourage them to use it. So if you are a leader, an executive pastor, if you have a budget, if you have a team, I want you to think about this, that if you just make the training and education available to your people, they probably will say yes. It's almost like that challenge that we give to our people. Hey, if we only just invite our friends and family to church, they will take us up on it. Same thing here. It's a parallel assumption that I'm making, that if you just make it available, that it is encouraging to your staff, to your team members, to your key volunteers, to your high capacity leaders, that they will take advantage of it. They are saying, hey, I want education and the tools and the training, and I want to see other people using it in the ministry context. That would help encourage me to get over that hump. So what is the other side of that spectrum? What's the biggest challenge? And you'll see their own lack of expertise, which is related to that question we just asked, right? Training and seeing other people. But the second one is ethical concerns, and that is serious. And we don't want to gloss over that. We dive deep into that into many of our discussions and workshops at Exponential Global we just had at West and Central that we're scheduling. We are thinking about these topics so that we can actually help facilitate this in your own context. But you can see some of the things that are the speed bumps of getting onto the AI highway. Now, there are known challenges, right? In churches and ministries, these are the top 4 issues that are reported: ethical concerns, lack of expertise, right? The need to learn, Congregational concerns, there's a little bit of a PR effort. One of our last sessions, we talked about that in the Q&A session, that we might be for it or we might be finding ways, but because of the creative imagination of the people in the pews, they're not educated. So there's this gap sometimes in terms of perceptions and expectations that leaders, we need to actually manage that and communicate that well. And that taps into this last one, that fear and lack of interest. So the fear and lack of interest is both on the leader level and also on the congregational level. So these are the 4 challenges that I think, hey, can you start to bring these up at staff meetings, at lunch and learns, at your retreats, to talk about these, because there's no right or wrong answer for all ministries, and it needs conversation for your ministry. So do you actually have ethical concerns? You'll see that people are highly concerned, somewhat concerned. There is a whole spectrum. It's not all or nothing. But what's interesting here is that when we compare that glue study from 2023 to this one, we asked the same exact questions so we can make a comparison. The number of people that said they were highly concerned went down from 2023 to 24. And the people who said, I'm not really that concerned, went up. So more people are really not that concerned, and less people are highly concerned in 2024 versus 2023. So there's been a shift in this posture to AI, and ethical concerns is one of them. Now, it's still a big concern. I will say there's a couple of concerns that have been identified, and we continue to reinforce and encourage you to think about these things, discuss these things, articulate them in writing, if possible, for your staff, for your community, for your volunteers. So the first one is there are moral and theological implications. Second one is this issue of perception of replacement of human interactions. Where in our ministry work do we want to protect human to human contact? Where in our ministry work is it okay to delegate or introduce and integrate AI into that process, right? So email inbox processing, you might not need human contact to do that if you could automate some of that with AI. One-on-one pastoral care, that's a human interaction. You probably want to protect that. Privacy and data is a big concern. All the XPs out there are listening. We know that this is a really big concern to you. Data leaks, phishing attacks, hacking, all that kind of stuff is real in today's day and age. And AI is only going to accelerate the accessibility to do that for bad actors out there. And so how your personal data is actually used is an important question. That's why you need an AI policy, so that everyone is on the same page and no one makes unintended mistakes because it wasn't articulated. Bias and discrimination is something that comes up all the time. Misinformation, accuracy, and then how certain people groups in your community might be represented, not represented in responses. And this is where you always need a human in the loop, and you need thoughtful interaction. And as church leaders, we always have a theological lens that we need to overlay into our interactions and how we evaluate and take what we get and use it outside of the AI tools. There are a lot of different ethical concerns out there. Again, the report goes into details of that. Now, on AI training and policy, I would love to know in the chat, do you have an AI policy written for your staff right now? Just say yes or no. I would say most churches do not have one right now. And that's what we found in this thing. This is great. We're seeing in the chat, some of you guys are saying yes, that you actually have an AI policy. Can you reach out to me and share it and maybe discuss it? Because I think we're looking for templates and examples of AI policies that other churches are using. But you'll see here, and probably this is a little bit expected, that over half of the churches out there don't have an AI policy. However, this is the surprising one. They have no current discussion about it. So that's interesting to me. That's not on the radar. And if it's on the radar, does that number shift? Does that bar shift to the left where you're starting to think about it, consider it, and actually doing it? Or does that 55% shift to the right where it says, we will not have an AI policy. It is not needed. We're going to ignore AI. We're going to use an ostrich in the sand metaphor. regarding AI. I wonder which direction that goes once it's brought up and the question is forced, should we have one or not? This is why one of the biggest takeaways of this and every other session and every talk that I give, the number one thing I want you to do is not to like pick up ChatGPT and become an expert. Is the number one thing is I'm commissioning you right now, listening right now. Your job, your number one job is to steward conversations about AI. You don't need to be the expert. You just need to be the facilitator, the host, sometimes the instigator, but starting conversations about AI in all of your team circles of influence for volunteers, high capacity donors, your congregation, your leaders, everybody. I want you to start to have those conversations because we are in it together and we learn better together. And again, we're so early in this innovation front that things are changing and evolving so quickly that there's no right answer. And the only way to get to the right answer is to do it in community. And we want you to have conversations. So we compared yes or no. Did you have one last year? Did you have one this year? And so you'll see that there's no policy or current discussion about it has gone up. What's interesting is we plan to, or currently developing one, the numbers have gone down. And I don't know. I think we would love to have some follow-up to dig into this deeper. But I don't know if it's because of, remember the earlier numbers, the concern about AI has dropped, right? So I'm wondering if the need for policy has gone away, anecdotally and statistically here, because we feel like it's been normalized more, or is it some other factor that's driving it? So here's the big question. Again, this is my challenge to you, is can everybody here jump into that blue zone at some point within this next month? Can I make that a 30-day challenge? Have you led your staff or team to discuss the topic of AI in your ministry work? Can we create a large, I need to revise, I want to be able to revise this chart within the next 30 days. I want to be forced to revise this chart so that that blue zone goes higher. Only 27% have said yes, they've actually talked about AI. AI is all over the place. When you go into the marketplace, businesses, secular businesses or organizations, they are all over AI. They're trying to figure out how to exploit it, maximize it, optimize it, AI. That means the people in your congregation that's showing up every week to your Sunday services, to your programs, to your events, etc., they are being exposed to AI all over the place. They're talking about it. But are you in your church? Are we becoming our own little silo that's compartmentalized, thinking that we're not part of the entire world when your people are in the pews, but our staff aren't? So this is just one of those things that I feel convicted to say, 30-day challenge. Can you pull out your calendar right now in your next staff meeting, suggest that this is a topic? 15-minute discussion, just start somewhere. So here's a great question. Are you willing to invest in AI education? You'll see, again, the numbers are skewing toward yes. We are already investing. We're very willing or somewhat willing. Everyone's posture is like, yes, we have to start thinking about this thing. Are you part of that group, or are you a part of the ones that haven't thought about it yet? And then this is a great number just to give you a benchmark of where everybody else is. If AI could potentially impact your work, how much would you actually be willing to put in the budget, right? A lot of people are coming to the summer. You're going to start to budget for the next half of the year or for 2025. Courses, conferences, workshops, cohorts, these things, how much should you be paying? And so the average church here is saying from $100 to $500, $500 to $1,000, right? Over 50% of the churches are willing to spend $1,000 a year to up to $1,000 a year. Is that something that you're earmarking? Do you have the discretionary funds for this year if it's not in your budget already? It's just something to think about. This is going to continue to grow, just like social media has grown, just like email has grown. All these other technology innovations has grown and become part of our work and our daily life in ministry. I am telling you right now, as a prediction, if I'm going to be, prophetic, AI is faster than all of those other things combined. So it's just one of those things where you probably need to start to think about what does that translate to in terms of prioritization of our dollars. And here's the last thing I'll say about these highlights. Again, there's more in the report. You're going to download it from the Exponential site. What's next? We came up with a couple of practical next steps for you. So the first one is at AI Next, we have a podcast series that we recorded. You can go to the Exponential podcast right now, or here's the URL, and get access to the podcast conversations that we talked about, some really high level topics that every leader would benefit from and enjoy. You could pass the link around to specific events, the specific episodes to your staff, and ask to have a discussion next time. Let everyone bring one insight back to the meeting and have a discussion. There's educational resources at our AI Next Hub, which is at exponential.org/AI-next. And then peer-to-peer learning, you want to see what other people are doing. As I mentioned at the very beginning, I facilitate a community of almost 6,000 church leaders right now. It continues to grow, called AI for Church Leaders. You can go to the Facebook group called AI for Church Leaders and Pastors and join that. And then we actually have a video series that we just published this last month, 7 videos, completely free training, no cost access for all church leaders for video training. Everything talking about the ethics and AI policy stuff to very specific tactical how to create images and use ChatGPT stuff. You can get that at AI Next. We have an actual training library at aiforchurchleaders.com. And then the last one is come out and meet me and hundreds of other leaders that are using AI. We've got pre-con, we've got workshops both at West and Central, which are coming up. And because I'm such a cheapskate, I twisted everybody's arm on the team and I got them to give you, my friends, a discount. What pastor or church leader doesn't like a discount? This is not public. This is not a public offer. So get this code AI 2024 and you can get a discount off of the already affordable price. The price for West and Central is super low. It's under $100 to begin with, and you're getting $19 off on top of that. And so meet me. I would love to actually meet up with you guys. Typically, we find a bunch of leaders and we go out for some meals also to trade notes after the workshops and the pre-cons. But California, Chicago, I would love to meet you guys there. And again, the last thing, we've been calling out this report. It's available now. Today it's available for free download for everybody. So please do us a favor. If you're going to do one thing this week, download this and use it as a conversation piece to start conversations with everybody else. Jason in the chat has just put the URL for this report inside the chat. Hopefully you take advantage of it. And so that's it. That's it in a nutshell. That was a lot, really quick. Carrie, where do I go from here?
That was so good, Kenny. I don't believe that I don't even know if you breathed during that whole presentation. It was amazing. Are you sure you're not AI generated right now? We did have a question that was dropped in the chat, and I'll just read it to you, Kenny, and you can answer this the best of our ability. It was a question from Christian that says, how have you protected against selection bias in these survey results? I'm wondering how many people who are against the use of AI would entertain participating in a survey about the use of AI in the church.
Yeah, I will say what we did is we tried to actually access different community lists. So it's not just the Exponential list. That's why we used different partners. I believe technically we went, I mean, I don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but it was over 100,000 leaders that we tried to reach and used promotional tactics across the board, which is why one, I think, artifact of that is that you've seen representation through denominations, as well as job functions, as well as age. And so, I agree with you that there might be a little bit selection bias. Again, this isn't, I don't think the purpose of this study is scientific in the fact that you're extrapolating to make a chemical compound or something. I think the takeaways are valid in terms of what can you do next, in terms of starting a conversation, equipping your people, making spaces so that your people can start to ask the question, how might we use AI? The answer might be none. We might not use AI for this specific use case or this specific ministry. But how do we ask that question? How might we use AI in this ministry use case and go down the line? I think that's hopefully the encouragement of this thing. Now, there's a couple other things that I think are good takeaways. I think in the next month or two on the AI Next and Exponential blog, there's a big article that we are publishing with more insights coming out of this, and you're going to see more stuff coming out of the survey. But I think that's a great point. It's a valid point. But and I'd love to have discussions about it if you have anything specific, more specific. But I think that's my takeaway. It's like we tried hard to be representative. We tried to find other partners that are of other persuasions, not just one theological, niche corner of the internet. And I think, I think we did a decent job of getting representation.
Yeah. Yeah. There's no way to guarantee that there wasn't a bias leaning into those taking it. But hopefully at least some who are curious enough that are against AI that participated to help us give us, a roundabout idea of at least how church leaders are using these tools. And I think
Carrie, I would say what's interesting is that I've given probably 20 to 25 speaking engagements over this last year on AI. What's interesting is almost every single one, there are people that show up, and this is for paid conferences too. They'll show up and say, I'm totally against it. I sat through your thing and I'm totally against it, right? They're paying to go to something that they know they're not going to use, but they still show up. And then they have the spectrum all the way up to people who use it. But people are chiming in on this conversation, I think more than other topics, and they feel a little bit more freedom than other topics, even when they're against it, to be part of that conversation. So for what it's worth, we are seeing, and you see it statistically in the survey, you're seeing people that are against it still responding to these things.
Yeah, I think that's good, Kenny. And I think one thing that I just want to highlight for you guys who are listening in, the reason that Exponential Next has AI Next as part of our focus areas this year and likely next year as well, is because we are seeing it rise to the top of conversation. It will impact the future of the church in one way, one form or another, if not many, many, many forms. And so at very least, regardless of how you feel about the topic, you should at least be educated in it so that you can have conversations with your church staff around the use of it. Ignoring it, it's not going to go away. I would say that we've been using AI for decades and we don't even realize it, right? So the average person has interacted with AI for, I don't know, how long, Kenny?
I think the first, it's decades.
Decades. So it's not new. It's just accelerating pretty significantly at a really fast pace. And so one of the things that we are honing in on in Exponential Next is how to help make it tangible for the average person like myself, who is not a techie, AI-driven person, to help us better understand how to use it, what can you use it for, why should we use it, what are the opportunities for us? And so especially if it means ultimately multiplying disciples who make disciples, right? And so at the end of the day, that's what we're all about, is multiplication. And so if this is a tool that God can use for his glory and for the good of the people who love him, then we should engage. And so do we have any last minute questions coming through before we shut this down? Kenny, you have been amazing. I appreciate it. I strongly encourage you guys to check out that Facebook page that Kenny mentioned. That is AI for Church Leaders on Facebook. It's a group that you can join. Requires nothing of you other than to join the conversation. This isn't a ploy to do some kind of branding or something. It's just a resource. Kenny's pretty passionate about getting church leaders up to date on this conversation so that we're not lagging behind, but instead we're utilizing the tools that God has put out there for us to utilize. So Kenny, any last minute thoughts?
I would say the number one thing in terms of just leaving you with something is hopefully that you're encouraged, and that the best way to do it is just to talk to other people that are using AI. And that's why the Facebook group is important, but also AI Next. This is why just listening to what other people are doing will help you form your own positions and worldviews. You don't need to be all in on it, but I think, like Carrie, you said, you just need to appreciate it and understand what it is. That is something that you need to figure out where you stand responsibly for this thing. So just start those conversations, and hopefully you'll go from intimidation to inspiration.
Yeah, so good, Kenny. One last question. You mentioned a few times that you wanted people to get in touch with you. What's the best way for them to do that?
You could, I know Barbara's been collecting some emails, so you can also email me at kenny@churchtechtoday.com, or, message me. I'm easy to find on social media, on all the TikTok, Instagram. Carrie, are you on TikTok? We got to get you on the TikTok.
I am on TikTok, but I don't think my account is public.
Oh, we got to get you a public account. Maybe you can do a
Okay.
dance for us or two.
Okay. I mean, that could be a new exponential next thing that we do, but we can talk about that later. Thank you guys so much for joining us today. We appreciate it, and we hope you enjoy doing a deep dive into that survey. What we shared with you is just a brief portion of that AI survey. It goes into a lot more depth, and so it's many, many pages long, and so we hope that it's useful for you, and join us along in the journey and the conversation at AI Next over the course of the rest of this year. Kenny, thank you so much for being with us today.